How to prepare a cartoon for tapestry weaving an image. First, pick an image. I chose to trace Matthew, our TA, onto a gridded ground, and I'm going to use this directly within the warp to realize this picture. When you're preparing an image, it's always good to have it grounded in a grid. So if you are downloading an image from the internet, you can superimpose a grid on it and then print it. And it'll be really helpful in orienting this within the warp. If you're using a photograph, you can get translucent or transparent gridded paper, vellum, to use. If you're using the gridded paper directly, I went ahead and traced Matthew very loosely. You can see my pencil line first, and then I went over and refined that image within the grid. And this grid is almost just the right density for my warp. If you're doing very complex image making, it's good to make a loom and get the right gridded density to match. In order to secure this piece of paper under the warp so we can start weaving, it's really helpful, excuse me, Matthew. It's really helpful to start by making a cross. And we had talked about winding a cross when you have a permanent warp left on an object. You don't have to have a cross all the way across your warp. You can isolate the cross in a particular area. So when we begin to weave this, first we decide where on the warp this image should be. And when you weave a complex image, it's rather different than changing color. You don't weave across the entire plane. You weave that image and then you'll weave around it. So decide where you want that picture to land within the warp. Place a cross by just tabby weaving one line and another. I'm using spaghetti because I have it around, but like double pointed knitting needles are really good, or any small wooden dowels. I know I want my weaving here, and I've gone ahead and folded the paper on the edges. I'm leaving room around the picture. I'm not folding the paper right to the edge of the image. I'm going to place it under the warp, and then I'm going to let those edges come out here. So you don't have to necessarily fold your paper, but I find it a little helpful in getting this to pop out. So here I am. I have my image centered, and then I also have this packing material. It's rather substantial, some sort of composite board, but you can make slats out of cardboard. And what you want to do is you're going to use the warp to stabilize the slat, but you're also going to put it under the drawing to bring the drawing as close to the warp as possible. So here you're going, just laying it on the warp, then you're going under the entire image and the warp, and then you're coming out here and again going over the warp. So there's no weaving. You can move this up and down very easily, and you'll just place your weaving on top of it. And you can see already that it brought the bottom of that image closer to the warp. I'm going to do it one more time to stabilize the top of this picture. And then there's different things you can do. Some people like to tape their image down. I am going to actually use these handy clips and clip all four corners where the image meets the bracket. And as well, I'm going to trap some warp in there. So you can see it's really sturdy. It will not mess up our warp material because these are pretty gentle. And it holds the image in place. So now when we start weaving, we can move our warp ends around, but the image will remain. And the reason that we dress this cross here is when you're doing an image, it's really easy to accidentally pull your ends in or have a more tensioned area where there's more detailed, maybe a finer material making up that part of the picture. So it's really helpful to have just a cross-dressed where you can always bring this down and then redistribute the density of the warp to keep this image from getting too tight itself. And that's how you prepare a cartoon.